I want to thank you, Ron, for that address. As I said, I think you've said some of those things before. But we very much appreciate hearing them here. I'd like to get on to a couple of the issues that are probably of mutual concern to everyone here, but maybe just start a little bit with your background and tell us how you came personally to hold these views. I assume this occurred when you were younger, and there's a lot of younger people here endeavoring to formulate their own views. So how did you come to this libertarian position?
Yeah. I think people have a natural tendency to be curious. I feel lucky that I was very curious and want to know what makes the world work. Some people suppress that curiosity. Some people accept, well, my schools told me this, my government. So not only have I been curious, but I've been skeptical, and I want to do my best to seek out what is true. But I did come across Hayek's book, The Road to Serfdom.
How old were you when you read that?
I probably got to reading a little bit. I remember one of the first novels I read was a book my mother gave me when I was still in medical school, and that was Dr. Zhivago. And it was, you know, sort of dramatic about the Soviet system, you know, and a story. But then I came across Hayek and Mises and went from there. So it was mainly through economic policy and those predictions made in 1971 when they came true. Then I became much more fascinated. That motivated me to at least say a few words in 1974. It was during my first campaign. My wife told me, when I told her I was going to run, she said, "Why are you going to do that?" And I said, "I want to just talk about this, get it off my chest, because I just, you know, feel like somebody needs to tell another message." She said it could be very dangerous. I said, "How could this be dangerous?" She says, "Well, you might end up getting elected." But I assured her she didn't know anything about politics. She didn't know what she was talking about.
Was there any particular political figure at that time that attracted you, or that you...
No, not one that was, you know, there, because mine were more attuned to, say, Mises and Hayek, economic theory. And I felt like there's a lot of instincts. I think a lot of us have instincts without having read economic theory and say, you know, freedom is pretty commonsensical, you know. So I looked to the economists, but I would say politically, you know, I was interested in the Goldwater campaign. You know, that was one of the early campaigns. And but generally speaking, even in my the congressional office, I essentially had a lot more pictures of economists than presidents. I have pictures of two presidents. One is Jefferson and one is Grover Cleveland.
Okay. Now, the Republican Party, particularly in the last elections and throughout the years, I guess, has had difficulty in attracting the support of younger people. And that's, to some extent, been a worry for conservatives in Canada, and yet you seem to be able to attract a lot of younger people. Now, to what do you attribute that?
Well, you know, when I'm in a flippant mood, I say, "Ask them." And I have.
Well, we asked a lot of them at the reception last night, "Why are you here?" And
well,
they kept mentioning
I talked
you,
to them because during campaigning, you know, I enjoyed talking to them. I'd ask that question a lot, and I had a lot of students, young people, come to my office. And, you know, when I was first in Congress in the 70s and 80s, then I went home and practiced medicine again through the 80s and early 90s. But parents would come in with their teenagers and give them a civics lesson, say, "This is your congressman," this sort of thing. And they were sort of dragged in. But the second go-around, come like 2008, when the revolution was going on, they came in, and the parents would admit, "We're only here because he wants to meet you." So, and they weren't like 18 or 20. A lot of them were 15 and 16. In 08, there'd be like a 14-year-old coming in, and before I knew it, the next campaign, he was voting and campaigning and everything else. But the answers are different. I think if I had to say one thing that was repeated more often was, I like what you say because you're telling the truth. And I said, well, others will say something very close to what I'm saying. They say, well, we have to follow the Constitution. I said, why don't you believe them? They say, well, they're not telling the truth. You know, they seem to sense that. But monetary policy, I was amazed at how many people have been introduced to monetary theory. And I don't believe that politicians are worth all that much. Sorry about that. I know. But politicians reflect prevailing attitudes. So what Preston's doing with the center is to me so significant because it changes people's minds. And this is the difference. But when the people's minds change, then it makes it easier for the politician to do it. So the politician reflects the people's attitudes. And that's why young people now are starting to reflect an intellectual revolution too, which have been rather peaceful. I mean, like, you know, the Cato's and the Mises Institute and these other groups, they have been teaching a lot. And in the 50s, when I first got interested, I think we had one group. It was called the Foundation for Economic Education, run by Leonard Read in New York. And but he sort of held things together for us. But now there are a lot of those institutions. There's a lot more professors. The Mises Institute is designed to get young people interested enough to become professors and teach. And that is what changes it. And now, it wasn't so much that I, you know, all of a sudden went out there and gave a great speech and young people responded. They were responding because they were getting introduced to these ideas and was sort of a confirmation. And I think that's what's happening. But probably the reason why people are responding now is that the need is evident. I think there is a consensus. Even those who are still able to manipulate the system, they're realizing that there's something not quite right with the system.
In your address, you mentioned the income disparities, obviously in New York, between what Wall Street is making and 50,000 people homeless on one night in government shelters. What is the libertarian answer to income inequality, what the Occupy movement was trying to draw attention to, I assume?
It's liberty, because...
I kind of thought you might say that. You want to elaborate on that a little bit? Yeah.
But if you say, does that eliminate all income equality? No, there will always be. Matter of fact, income inequality is okay. But like I mentioned in my talk, if you want to look for the system that gives the maximum amount of prosperity and the most distribution, the largest middle class, you know, we always enjoyed the largest middle class ever, but we don't have that. I mean, we have a shrinking middle class, and if we go broke, or when the bankruptcy is declared, and everybody who's living off the government, it's there. I mean, it's going to be very poor. You know, the systems of total socialism designed, you know, to get rid of the income inequality, and they do in many ways achieve this, and they have an equality of poverty. I like the other method. I like to see people who get rich and it spins off and there's more a bigger middle class. And one place where I think we as conservatives and libertarians get into a little trouble with left and right business is that the left right now say, well, there's an income disparity. The solution is soak the rich, raise the taxes on the rich. And yet I complain about some of the rich. If the rich are getting rich because they have a super good contracts, protectionism or subsidies, and part of that system, no, you want to get rid of that system, you know, that's doing it. But if you're Bill Gates or somebody and they can produce a product that we like, and on their own, and they drive the price down, and the consumer rewards that company, and they become real wealthy. Even if they do that and they serve the consumer and they do it honestly, we don't even have to worry about what they do with their money. You know, we don't have to worry about, well, did you donate 10% last year or 5%? I believe in charity and helping people, but it won't matter because they provide such a great service, you know, in getting rid of this income inequality. But this notion that it can be done with force and intimidation and central economic planning and below interest loans, it's a fiction. But the problem is it helps in the short run. You know, if you take it and say, well, we give free housing, free medical care, free education, And we just did this for 5 years. And you say, well, it's not a very good system. And they, what do you mean? What are you going to do with all these good things that you've done? Well, what is it going to do on the long term? And the long term is, not many people want to look at that, but the long term is here. That's the point I'm making. It's here now, and we have to reassess it.
We have some media people that want to talk to you, so this will be the last question. We could spend a lot of time here talking, but maybe the last question is more political. I think we Canadians observe the American political culture, and we notice that you tend to polarize on issues. You go to your corner and you fight it out, which often clarifies the issues more. We in Canada tend to compromise even before we get to the compromises, so we sometimes not quite as clear as it is in the United States.
But then you don't have to fight, right?
Well, that's right. Yes, we're kind of gentle. But then usually what, on the longer term pattern in the United States, then there's some kind of coming together on a course of action to do something. I think a lot of us looking at the current Congress in relation with the Congress and the President don't see this coming together. So I guess my last question to you would be, how do you see this impasse between the Democrats and the Republicans, between the presidency and the Congress, over issues of taxation and spending cuts coming to some resolution? Or do you see that happening?
No.
You don't?
And there's one reason, is they're not admitting the truth. They're still in total denial. They still think you can have the welfare system, we can fight endless wars, we can keep printing money, and there's nothing wrong with borrowing.
But does that come to an end at some point?
Yeah, it does. And there's only one thing. They've lost the confidence in the economy. It'll end when the world loses confidence in our great export of paper dollars. And then the dollar goes down in value, not so much that all of a sudden buy other currencies, but they'll start buying stuff. And they're starting to do that already. Farmland and other commodity prices will go up, and that will be the litmus test of what will happen. But no, they're not going to come to an understanding. They got along quite well when it seemed like wealth was endless and our credit was endless and there were no limitations. But they're in total denial about how serious the financial crisis is. Now, if you and I were in business together and our cash flow all of a sudden dried up, and we knew that in 2 months now the bankers would call our notes, we would straighten up. But that doesn't happen with government, and they're in that denial, and they think they can do it. And it's not just the Democrats. Both sides believe in that, because Republicans don't think you can stop any weapons, and that's one point I've made, that I just think that the coming together has to be the coalition that I've tried to build with conservatives and liberals, and saying, maybe we shouldn't spend so much money on going around the world telling other people to live. That doesn't mean that we should be a closed society, and it doesn't mean that we should have protectionism. Matter of fact, some people call me, a protectionist, but I'm not. I want free trade. I want low tariffs and all. But I don't want to tell other people. The people who call me an isolationist are the very first ones who want to put on sanctions on all these countries. And our, free markets help. I love it since we've been trading with China, because I remember the Korean War. Believe me, the difficulties with trade is minor compared to, us killing each other. So free trade is wonderful, I think. And I think those are the answers. Answers can be found in the cause of liberty.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.